The heart of a blue whale is so big, a human can swim through its arteries.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I love my little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow 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 wow.
Hello,
Daddy
and welcome
wasn't
to the Mochiverse.
finding a
I'm
bow
Lynette.
wow.
And I'm Skip,
How are you today?
doing really good. Interesting about the blue whale. It was that video we saw recently that the guy got swallowed by the whale, the kayaker. Did you see that
No,
one?
I didn't
Yeah,
see that.
yeah. Guy over in, I think it was Sweden or something, this kayaker, a blue whale swallowed him.
Oh, oh no. Was he
And he
made
got
out
out.
of, wait,
He
was
got
he a
out.
real boy or was he made out of wood?
No, no, real boy. You know, and it was that's gonna freak out. Anyway, so
Was his name Jonah?
I don't, it might have been,
Oh no.
but
Oh
yeah, it
no.
was.
Does that, when biblical stuff comes true, does that mean it's the end of times? Is that what that?
Yeah, well, let's not talk about that. Yeah.
I just watched that. I just rewatched that movie. Don't Look Up. Sorry, I'm in a mood.
Okay.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh. All right, folks. So today we're going to, I guess this is a part two, right? Of our BS or
yes,
true or
yeah, part two. It's facts that are real and thought to be BS.
yeah. So that works.
Part two. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, I wondered if we should do the counterpart to that because as I was doing a little bit of research on your bullets, I found a lot of like things that we thought were true that are BS. That would be fun to do too.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
have to
that
think
would
about
be.
that
Yeah.
for a future one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's quite a few of them. So why don't we just get into it?
Cool.
The first one is placebos. So studies suggest that placebos work even when the subject knows they are taking a placebo. And of course, I'm about to ask if you've heard of this. You're the one who wrote the bullet, but had you heard of this before?
Yes, I've heard of it before. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of funny. It supports with some folks, and we all know. I think we all know somebody who be like that,
Hmm. Oh, yeah.
who have these imaginary things. If you give them a pill for something, and then all of a sudden it cures it when it was imaginary all along.
Well, that's a good plot for Doc Martin, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah.
But the funny thing is that I mean our minds are so powerful and our minds can control our bodies so much that placebos actually do work to relieve at least real conditions. So placebo comes from the Latin phrase I shall please. So I guess it sort of means like, make you happy. They're generally used in medical studies to test medications. Like they're used as the control. They want to study the effectiveness of a medication that's under development. And they've been used for a long time. And placebos are actually used in practice as well, most notably like with birth control pills. When you have certain birth control pills have a cyclical nature to them, they're in cycles. And you would take one hormone for a certain amount of days, another hormone for another amount of days, and then you do that for 3 weeks, and then on the fourth week you take a placebo, and the person knows they're taking the placebo. The
Right.
placebo works for two reasons. The first reason is that a person remembers to take a pill every day because it would be
Mhm.
kind of hard to go take a pill every day for 3 weeks and then not take one for a whole week. You don't know what day it is half the time.
Mhm.
But the other use of the placebo is to your brain knows you're taking a pill. You're taking a pill at the same time every day, and it's doing hormonal stuff to you over a period of time. It kind of actually does sometimes work to trigger the cycle to work the way it's supposed to. It's actually really fascinating. So, when they were doing these studies over time, they noticed that some of the study participants that were in the placebo groups were also having therapeutic effects. So the numbers were a little bit funny. Over time, they've adjusted those to what they do is they sort of adjust the margin of error. You know, you have enough data, the more people you have in a study, so that you can say, well, it's this many people, this much placebo, the percentages are better, so that you can really tell if the medicine's working and it's not the placebo effect. And most good studies are double blind anyway, which means that neither the participant nor the people running the study know which one the person's taking.
Right. I've always been a great believer in the power of the mind.
Hmm.
If you think about it, just one thing that always comes to mind is that, say that you have to get up at a certain time.
Hmm.
You set your alarm for a certain time.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you're up right when the alarm
Oh yeah.
goes off, or
Yeah.
even before. Well, it's like, so your mind is powerful in that regard. And I also believe myself of my mind curing things for me or calming things for
Hmm.
me. If something is a certain way, and I say, well, okay, I don't. Let me just relax or breathe or whatever the heck I got to do,
Right.
and to calm it down, rather than say, oh my God, I'm having a cardiac, oh my arm's going to fall off, and
Right.
so in a way, there's a pragmatism to what I do, anyways. But uh, more than that, it's the mind thing. I really believe in it. I believe
Hmm.
that you can control it, and you can control your mind, and even to the point where we don't want to get into psychologists and stuff like that. But a lot of the for the most part, unless you have some kind of a chemical imbalance, if you really focus on what is going on, you can solve it. That's digress a little bit, and that really goes to, that's like a placebo. In a way, it's a placebo.
Hmm. Oh no, absolutely. And I mean, for me, for myself, when it comes to conditions or not feeling well, most of that's created by my anxiety anyways. So a
Mhm.
lot of a lot of, anti-anxiety techniques do help with a lot of my symptoms.
Yeah.
And I have it little bit later down in my notes, but oh yeah, no, it's right here. My heating pad. My heating pad is like my magical placebo for me because it's like it doesn't matter what's wrong. Like if I'm having, I mean, I'm having like sciatic pain
Mhm.
and for a lot of patients, sciatic pain can only be helped with something given for the nerves because it's a
Right.
nerve pain. And I could take, some anti-inflammatories that can help relieve the pressure on the nerve. But if I put my heating pad on it, I'm saying to myself, I will feel better when this heating pad goes on. And it kind of, I don't know what it does. Maybe my brain tells certain parts of my body to relax and it takes pressure off the nerve, but it works for me every
Mm.
time. Any kind of stomach issues, that heating pad goes there, headaches, everything. It's like the heating pad. Like, some people like ice. I like
Mm.
my heating pad and it's a comfort thing.
Okay. Yeah.
It solves all my problems. Also, a placebo is my philosophy of all of my ailments lasting 6 weeks. I think you and I have talked about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whenever I have something wrong with me, it usually lasts about 6 weeks. When I have my knee problem, it was like 6 weeks. Now, I also did something to try and help my knee. Like I wore a
Mhm.
knee brace and I took some ibuprofen and I tried to walk a little bit more. But that knee pain went away in 6 weeks and then I got like pain in my back or in my side. Or then I was having like a tooth problem for 6 weeks. Or then like, for a while I was having like an eczema thing on my hand for 6 weeks. Everything I have lasts for 6 weeks.
Well, if part of the conversation we had earlier about changes,
Yeah.
it's well known that when you make a change to something, it takes you 6 weeks to get it embedded in you.
Hmm.
And think about that, 6 weeks from what you just said.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Well, and it's funny because 6 weeks to me, I think 6 weeks to my brain is a long enough time because it's pretty easy for my brain to wrap around a month or a week,
yeah,
right? But 6 weeks is just far enough out where I lose count.
yeah,
And so it seems like a long time. I know 6 weeks is like what, 42 days.
right.
But for me, if it's been any period of time longer than a month, it feels like 6 weeks. So it's very possible that my symptoms that I have last around a month and a couple of days. But for me, anything over 30 days, that's 6 weeks now.
There you
So my
go.
mind, my brain is a little bit weird anyways, because 6 weeks is too far to think out. You know how they say that you can't visualize $1 million or whatever?
Yeah.
Like actually look and visualize $1 million bills. I can't visualize 42 days apparently.
Yeah.
That's, I guess. So yeah, placebos. They do actually work to give relief of symptoms. There's never been any, or there isn't any good evidence that it can actually cure anything. So cures, I mean, and you're talking about like a documented illness that
Yeah,
if you do nothing will not go away.
right.
There's no evidence that placebos cure cancer, for instance. But a lot of things like that have to do with, pain, discomfort, side effects that come from an illness. A lot of those can be alleviated very well with placebos, which is, it's nice. And it is pleasing, I guess. And this is controversial, but homeopathic treatments, a lot of the success of those does rely on the placebo effect. And the thing about the homeopathic sort of strategy of medicine, it's more complicated than I'm about to explain it as, but a very large part of it is basically if you have a substance that you you want to use as a cure for something, you basically dilute it and then you dilute it mathematically over and over again. So it's now halved, then it's half of that, then it's half of that, then it's half of that many times, like a million times. And if you dilute a substance enough times, eventually you can't detect it. And the philosophy behind homeopathy is that, like, once you dilute it to a very high amount, it becomes powerful at that point because it's so small. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm probably not explaining it perfectly, but it's a really interesting theory. A lot of it has to do with faith and a lot of it has to do with other things. Honestly, I have no problem with people using homeopathic remedies, unless they're using them like instead of something that's been proven to work, things like that.
Yeah,
But um, it is interesting that the placebo effect does seem to work with those because you believe that if you believe the homeopathic process and it's going to work for you when you take this pill, it's going to help you. Um, which gives placebos a lot of credit. And if it's, what are you going to do if it makes somebody feel better? How can you say that it's bad, right? As
right.
long as they haven't
Right.
spent their life savings on it. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like,
Mm.
if you don't ruin yourself and you don't make the situation worse, how can you blame somebody for doing something like that? And I
Right.
don't. So there's my piece on that. I guess it's controversial because like I I don't like to say the words like, oh, it's all in your head and it's fake. I don't like to say those kind of things because those are
Yeah.
too simple to say.
Yeah.
It's
No,
too
it
much of
is.
a,
Yeah.
yeah, too much of a simplification. So there's my take on that. There's also such a thing as a negative placebo. Did you know this before I had this in my notes, or have you seen it in my notes?
No, I didn't know that. Although it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very creatively called a nocebo. This is kind of like, okay, this happens to me. This is kind of like if you tell somebody that that here, eat this, it's going to make you sick, right? They're going to feel nauseous probably afterwards.
Yeah.
Or, it's kind of like that whole thing where somebody throws up in the room and
Oh, yeah. That's yeah, yeah. That's
everybody
right.
else kind of nothing to do with smell or
Yeah.
sensation or seeing. You just all of a sudden, I just don't feel good. I don't feel good today. Nope, I don't feel good. Or you hear about something that's around
Yeah.
and all of a sudden you think you're getting it, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. I equate it with that. I am totally like this, and I've been like this every time I have to take an antibiotic because I know from my experience and my training that a lot of antibiotics can be upsetting to the stomach.
Right.
And I happen to have a lot of phobias about stomach upset.
Mm.
And I have very strong anxiety about upset stomach and the things that come along with it. Uh, and I haven't wrapped my brain around that yet. I haven't unpacked all of that with myself yet.
Yeah.
But it's very whenever I have to take an antibiotic, I sit there and I have to psych myself up for like a couple of hours or so before I take it. I say, okay, here we go, here we go, here we go, because I think it's gonna like, make me feel sick.
Yeah. It's interesting that an antibiotic, as I take the antibiotics before I have a dental appointment.
Oh yeah.
And the thing of it is, the first time I had to take it, it was really on an empty stomach because I've been fasting,
Oh yeah.
and I was really concerned about taking it on an empty stomach.
Yeah, because
And
that's 4 pills. That's a high dose.
yeah, but it didn't bother me. But it did flash through my mind, when I took it.
Oh yeah.
So Fortunately, any of the other procedures I'm going to have, I don't think I need to fast for them. But, and I'm not sure if that is something that is embedded in us from hearing from folks talking
So,
about antibiotics upsetting the stomach.
yeah.
So you just, that may be what it is. You never know. You never know with this stuff. I'm sure somewhere along the line there was talk about antibiotics
Hmm.
potentially upsetting your stomach. Maybe when a doctor gave me an antibiotic at some point, they said that. And so it's always in my mind.
Well,
And
yeah.
perhaps it's the same for you, is at some point somebody said, it's going to take antibiotic, but just be prepared. You could get an upset stomach for this,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then it maybe it gets you more than
Oh,
it does
sure.
somebody
Because I'm
else.
expecting. Well, and for me, it's my job. Like literally,
Right.
I hear it 50 times a day.
Mm.
And I know it for a fact that it happens.
Right.
But the funny thing is that everybody is different and everybody responds differently to different medications. So you kind of just say that to be like, hey, if this happens, take it with crackers or whatever, some bread or a small meal or whatever. But then the other thing was I did take a certain antibiotic once and it did make me sick and I wasn't expecting it
Yeah.
because I had just never taken that one before and it's very, very common. But I took that med thinking everything was going to be fine and I got real sick real fast. And I was like, oh no, I'm never taking that one again, first of all. And second
That's
of
right.
all, what if the other ones do the same thing? Like I was so
Yeah.
paranoid.
Yeah.
Oh, every single time. But
Yeah.
anyway, so yeah, so that's placebos. Do you want to do the next one?
Sure. Sure.
Okay.
Astroglide, Astroglide lube is
Yes.
originally supposed to be a space shuttle coolant,
Ah,
which explains why it learned the name Astroglide.
correct. Yes.
This guy, Daniel X Ray, W R
Yeah.
A Y,
Yeah.
that's his real name.
I looked. I
Uh,
looked in like 10 places. That really is his name.
yeah. So he was a rocket scientist who worked on a shuttle program, and he had patents for, several different items. It says, here's the question, really, when we talked about the backstory of Vaseline, how the inventor noticed that the lubricant used in machinery was found to be effective for treating cuts
Yeah.
uh, and burns. So imagine, my imagination gets a little out of hand, right? And you say, how about the leap from the space shuttle coolant that goes to a personal lubricant?
Yeah, those NASA
Uh,
people, they're dirty dogs. That's why.
they're dirty dogs. Can you really do it in space? And anyways, in reality, the guy seems to have been a literal genius because he became the CEO of Biofilm, a
Yes.
medical company.
That's the company that
So
makes Astroglide. Yeah.
yeah, the Astroglide. So it's amazing how these things come in. Like the Vaseline story is sort of perfect. For how that came about.
It's the first thing I thought of. That's why I
Yeah,
wrote that. I was like, okay.
but however, to me, that's kind of an unfortunate name for a product. But that's just my take on it.
Well, this guy's a rocket scientist. Rocket scientists they like their cute little connections.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
So
nerdy and they like to make jokes. And so they're
yeah,
like, I'm gonna freaking call this Astroglide. That's so funny. Oh, poor guy.
yeah.
He's rich. I shouldn't
He's
feel bad
rich.
for him.
That's right. I can't complain about the richness. Um,
Exactly.
so the next one you want to take?
Yes. Okay. Okay. So you put this in here and I knew right away I had to do a little research on it, but I did stop myself because otherwise I'd go into a big rabbit hole.
Yeah,
So
we don't need the rabbit
we
hole.
don't
Yeah.
need too many rabbit holes. So what you would put down the Cornish word for breath is anal. Okay. And it's spelled ANAL, which is a very funny fact to put in a thing of facts.
Yep.
It's obviously not pronounced that way, right?
Right. No, it's not.
Okay. So the Cornish language is it's one of the old Celtic languages. So Cornwall is one of those areas of the United Kingdom that has hung on to its old sort of Celtic roots. And so like Welsh and Scottish Gaelic and Irish Gaelic, the Cornish language is related to one of those. And actually a lot of those languages have a lot of similarities. If you look at that word for breath or breathe, they all sort of look like that. Like it's like Anel or
Right.
Aneth or something like that with a D and a
Yeah.
T. It's like all these weird letters.
Right.
But yeah, so it's probably pronounced more like Anel or Anel.
Yep.
Uh, and it's, it's just an old word. And
Yep.
I think it carries on to some other languages in the area that aren't the Celtic languages, but there's a ton of there's a ton of cool things. It's around the same reason why, you know, you see a lot of Irish names that if you were to try and pronounce them with an American accent, the way the letters are written, it doesn't look like the name like Siobhan or Sinead, for instance, or like one of the you know, some of those Irish names that look like,
Yeah.
you know, Siobhan looks like Siobhan, but it's
Mm.
not, obviously, because the letters meant different things back in the old days. So
Yes.
yeah, it's kind of like that. My name, because my name looks French, but my name actually derives from Welsh, and it was spelled Eluned, and it's the same origin as the name Enid, and it
Mhm.
sounds a lot like Enid. It's like a Linith, and it became like Elenet or Linette, something like that, and it kind of evolved into Lynette, and then it went into, I mean, it actually did go into France as well in other languages,
Mm.
but my name is Enid.
Yeah.
I actually
There you
kind of
go.
like it. Like Elenid. But yeah, so yeah, Celtic languages. So that's what that one
Yeah.
comes from.
Yep. And that's just, it's perfectly understood. You know, you look at it, and the reason I put it in there is because it's really sort of a quirk of language and the way it is. You look at a word that's commonly used, and you look at it and you say, this is how you say it.
Right.
And you're not really looking at the derivatives of it.
Hmm.
A little like the discussion we have before when we meet some people from the other parts of the country,
Right.
and they say something about the Massachusetts accent.
Yeah.
And what nowadays I correct them and I says, okay, why don't you sometime listen to somebody from Britain or somebody from Australia?
Hmm.
They drop their R's and the H's just like we do.
Just like we
Yeah.
do. Yep.
Yep.
Well, yeah,
And
I've had English people make fun of me for dropping my R's, and I'm like, are you kidding me? When's the last
yeah,
time you even said an R?
that's right. That's it.
Like to have a word with
That's
Jonathan Ross.
yeah. And I mean, and the reality is Massachusetts language, is the original, this is where the British came in,
Hmm.
and they maintained that the
Well,
same
yeah.
sounds that grew through the years.
And
So,
it's just like other places. It's just like other colonies, as a matter of
yeah,
fact. People who were put in a certain place around different people, and
yeah,
they ended up growing up with a hybrid of different accents that became their accent.
right. Yeah,
It pretty much happens everywhere, everywhere the people settle and then, you know, travel to and then settle for whatever reason, good or bad.
yep, yep.
Yep. Oh yeah, I know. I could, like I said, I could go into
It's
a
a
huge
dive,
rabbit hole.
yeah, and it's a something you could really dive into a lot. But it was, like I say, when I first saw it, that was really the reason
Oh,
I
sure.
picked up on it,
Yeah, because it
because
says
it's
anal.
quirk of the New English language.
The next one, had you heard of, before you put this in there, had you heard of the next one? It was on a few news stories when they first discovered it or created it.
I have heard of it,
Hmm.
and then when I saw it, it goes, oh yeah, okay, I've heard of that before, so
Hmm.
didn't remember, it's just like it's in the recesses of your mind that you've
Oh,
seen it
sure.
before,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. So yeah, so the next one is the darkest substance known is called Vanta Black, and it absorbs 99.965% of all visible light. And this was created, this substance. It is actually really cool because it's like
mhm,
nanotechnology. Vanta Black is a material consisting of very densely packed nanotubes, and they're so densely packed that they can't reflect light. So nanotubes, they make them by rolling up sheets of like just single carbon atoms. So you have like a sheet of carbon atoms, and then you roll them up very tightly in very little tiny tubes, and they're so close together and they're carbon that they can absorb almost all of light. And I have seen Vanta Black, you know, because I mean, like, obviously they just show it on TV, so it's not a true representation. I've never seen it in person,
mhm,
but I've heard that seeing it in person is like really mind blowing because
yeah,
it's like it's almost like nothing's there. It's
right,
so black. And of course, because it's a scientific thing that scientists made, it has to
mhm,
be an acronym. And so Vanta Black is stands for vertically aligned nanotube array black.
yeah, yeah. That's it.
They do love their acronyms and their anagrams and their
Well, it's just like,
wordplay. Yeah.
yeah. Well, medicine carries the same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So the next one you'll see that I put some different colored text on your notes
Mhm.
because there's a little bit of a confusion there. What you had gathered, what you had curated was it was about Sir Isaac Newton spending hundreds and hundreds of pages trying to prove that 1 + 1 = 2. And the confusion there is that that wasn't Sir Isaac Newton who did that. The reason it's confusing is because Sir Isaac Newton wrote several volumes of a work called Philosophiae, it's like Philosophiae Naturalis Principia Mathematica. But then much later, two gentlemen named Alfred North Whitehead and Bertrand Russell wrote a 3 volume work called Principia Mathematica. So it's actually Bertrand and Whitehead's version of Principia Mathematica that does the hundreds of pages trying to prove that 1 + 1 = 2. They're the mathematical guys.
Yep.
So that was the correction there. I was like, what? I was having a hard
What?
time finding. I was like, Isaac Newton, I mean, he did some math, but he was physics and principles of gravity, and his work, the one I said before, deals with the laws of motion that we all know.
Yep.
Uh, and the laws of gravity, and also there's a lot of philosophy when it comes to science in his thing. He
Yeah.
Back in those days, what was that, the 1600s and beyond, like in ancient times,
Mhm.
philosophy, mathematics, and science were all the same thing. So, and religion as well. It was like all the same thing to these learned gentlemen. It was all men. So that's why the word mathematica is in there, philosophy is in there, naturalis and principles. It's basically the natural world. He was explaining the natural world and all the principles of how they work.
Which on the outset, it seems pretty silly to
Mm,
say that you write a 162-page report
right.
on proving that 1 and 1 = 2.
Yes, however, the mathematician guys, this was in oh, did I write down what year that was? Yeah, 1910. So
Mhm.
the reason I'm definitely not a math person, so
Yep.
I'm not going to get into why exactly. But the reason they took hundreds and hundreds of I think it was 162 pages of proof to prove that 1 + 1 = 2 is because before you get to 1 + 1 = 2, you have to explain, well, what's one? And what isn't one, and
Yeah.
what are numbers. And so
Yeah.
you have to establish the rule for every single number. And that's like real mathematics. That's like the heavy duty
The
mathematics.
mathematics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like not the mathematics that we were ever taught, you and I.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
but
the
yeah.
mathematics, like the philosophy, like the thing I've talked to you before about,
Hmm.
is listen to somebody who knows every
Yes.
minuscule thing about something. Reading a book about math is like,
Yes.
hey, you want a good nap? Read a book about math. Right?
But yeah, I mean, there are definitely people who think along these lines, and you
Yeah.
really do. I mean, it's not given. Did you ever do a thing either in college or maybe in high school where you basically you had to turn your back to someone and they had to describe how to draw something or describe the famous one is how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you had to give all the steps,
Uh-huh.
and the person had to follow those steps exactly how they were written, and if they didn't do it right, your steps were wrong. I don't know if you've ever done an exercise like that in
No,
school. We did
if
one
I
like I would have to describe to you how to draw something.
gotcha.
And you need to draw the thing I told you to draw. And it almost
Mhm.
never comes out right because I forgot to tell you to place your hand on the pencil and pick up the pencil. Place the pencil between your index finger and your middle finger and place the writing part of the pencil onto the paper and drag the graphite part of the pencil across the paper in an arc. Like you have to do that. Instead, they're like,
Right.
draw a circle.
Yeah. Well,
And they're like,
yeah.
well, okay, what do I do? And you can do literally and that's the thing about mathematical proofs is they have to include every specific
Step
piece.
that gets you
Yes,
there. Yeah.
exactly. So that's what that one's all about.
Yep. Okay.
Fascinating stuff that I can wrap my brain around the concept of, but I can't execute very well, if that makes any sense.
Well, yeah, if you put it, mechanics is a form of mathematics, and it's like mechanical assembly.
Right.
Is it's the same thing what you described. You have to start from a certain point, or the assembly is not going to work.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
that that's it's the same thing. It's just it's mathematics. It's based on physical stuff, but
Hmm.
physical stuff is based on mathematics, like you just said.
Yeah.
Turn put the pen between your index finger and your thumb, that kind of stuff.
Oh
So
yeah, making sure that the graphite part is closer to the page because then people be drawing their erasers and like you can. It was our job as when you were the other person, like with the peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It was our job as the other person to do it as wrong as possible based on what it was said. Like be create. Like in other words, if they said, "Open the jar of peanut butter,"
right.
you just like smash it on the floor.
Yeah, and the deeper part of this is, I'll go back to my thing about assembly,
Yeah.
is that I remember one time, we had folks assembling and wiring power supplies, and every person had a different notebook about what to do.
Right.
So I decided in my electronic mind that I would explain to him how the circuits worked.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get past the fuse. It was like they just didn't get it.
No.
So I said, okay, I want you to put a black wire here and
Hmm.
coming out of that black wire coming out on the other side of this point, bring it to this point here, that,
Yeah.
and give them physical stuff to show, as opposed to theoretical stuff, which
Hmm.
is what we're talking about with math. Okay.
Oh, sure. Because ultimately, the reason they taught us this in, I don't even remember which class it was in, but ultimately, the reason uh, was that someday we're going to have to tell a computer how to do something.
Yep.
And the
Exactly.
computer's not going to know how to open a jar of peanut butter because it doesn't know what a jar of peanut butter is. So you have to tell
Right.
it how to open a jar of peanut butter
That's right.
the right way. So anyway,
Yep.
I find it fascinating, but again, it's very big stuff. So,
Pretty much.
but yeah, so 162 pages to prove 1 + 1 = 2.
There you go.
But does it really? I guess it depends on what one is. I like this one. Do you want to do it?
Oh, okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Someone once left a cat $12.5 million. Are you going to leave all your money to Barkley?
Yeah, I've got 50 cents. He'll be all set. So
You're going to leave all the peanut butter to Barkley.
eh, we'll leave the peanut butter and the treats, and he'll be happy. So
I don't want his toys anyway. You can leave him all his toys.
yeah. Oh yeah, his toys too. Yeah, he's got. Hey, listen, he's he still
He's
has
got more
toys
stuff
from a
than
couple
me.
of years. I know,
Yeah,
it's unbelievable, and it's
exactly.
hard. So I'll bring in the toy that he gets a little bored with it and rips the end of it after playing with it long enough, and we'll try to repair it. And after about the second or third time trying to repair it, we just say, okay, let's throw it out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because he's got plenty of toys.
Oh,
Uh,
we get like a monthly box of toys for the cats, and they're good quality for what I'm spending.
yeah,
But they're not like forever toys. And
yeah,
so about once a month or so, Rich will go through and find the grossest, like nastiest, falling
yeah.
apart ones, and he'll chuck those,
Mm.
and we get a new box. But they're still accumulating. It's not like all of them are going away every month. They
No,
got
no.
little fishies everywhere, and still that one that Sue made. They still have that. That's gonna last forever.
Yeah, well, it's funny because yeah, he'll if we take that out and put treats in it, and then we forget to put it away because you got to put it away.
Oh yeah.
All of a sudden, you'll be sitting at your chair or out in the kitchen, and he comes walking out with it in his mouth and drops it at your feet. Okay, it's time to fill this. And it's like, okay, so
Yeah,
they've got to
we
remember to put it away.
That's right. That reminds me. I got to put that bag of cat treats away because they will find it and chew through
Yeah.
it. The Isabel was trying to eat Cocoa Pebbles today because it has a bag just like her treat bag does. Like, no, you can't have Pebbles. Anyway, so the inheritance thing. So
Yeah.
this, I imagine that was probably referring to Blackie. He was the
Yep.
cat of an antiques dealer in the UK named Ben Ray. And this happened in 1988. And when Ray died, he decided to keep his family out of his will and instead divided the majority of his money between three cat charities, with special instructions that Blackie be cared for by them for the rest of his life in order to in order for them to get the money. And that is how you have to do it. So if anybody who's listening wants to leave all their money to their dog or their cat, you kind of can't do it that way. You have to leave it to some person or some trust with the object of caring for the animal. So you gotta, people gotta pay attention to that. You know, if you're gonna leave it
Yep.
all to Barkley, you have to leave it all to, like, me, and then
Yeah.
I'll take care of Barkley.
Right. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so some other rich pets. There's been a lot of them. You're
Yeah.
always hearing these every once in a while,
Yeah.
but Tommaso in Italy, he actually broke Blackie's record in 2018 when his owner gave him 13 million in trust with the nurse, with her nurse. So she gave the money to her nurse in order to take care of the cat. Now, if you have a cat that you've had for quite a while and then you pass away, leaving all your money to your nurse, if it's $13 million, that's pretty good for the nurse. I mean, what, you
Yeah.
may have the cat for 5 or 6 more years, you know.
Yep.
How much money does that cat really need? So you have to be really careful writing that trust. You might want to, like,
Yep.
write it for what happens after Tommaso is gone,
Right.
maybe. Leona Helmsley, I'm sure you remember this story
Oh yeah.
because you remember who she was. She had some not so nice nicknames, I think. Was she like the Queen of Mean? It was one of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, she was a super rich lady. And she was known for being, I mean, they just love to wave the word bitch around that
Yeah.
time. But, she was a shrewd businesswoman, I guess we could say. It was all over the news when she willed $12 million to her dog and disinherited her family. And that's usually part of it. It
Yeah.
usually makes the news because not because of the dog getting the money, but because of the family not. And a judge later amended it down to 2 million because apparently 12 million was an excessive amount to fulfill the purpose of providing for the dog,
The dog. Yeah.
which is very interesting because I hadn't seen other cases of a judge lowering that figure before. Maybe they have done it and it wasn't talked about, but it does kind of stand to reason that if you have a specific enough trust, you're going to have to say what that trust goes to, and you kind of have to justify the amount, right? Because, like, you would have to say they need this much in veterinary care, this much in food, this much in shelter, this much in that. So if you can do that for 2 million, why are you giving 12?
Yeah. Well, that's probably the other part of that is the family. Obviously, the family. It's a legitimate question,
Right.
and you're right. You have to be specific about what that care, why this amount, what justifies that amount. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah. It's very interesting because if you give it to a person, you don't have to justify that amount. But I imagine
Right.
if you're setting up a trust, it has to be more specific. That's I found that part interesting about the judge. Miles Blackwell. This is my favorite one I found. Miles Blackwell. He was a publishing tycoon. He died in 2002, and he left $15 million in trust to his chicken, Gigu.
Ego, put a name.
He left it to a chicken.
Yeah, that's crazy. How long does a chicken live?
I was just gonna say that. Can't be that long, right? A couple
No,
years?
yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting point. I don't know how long they live.
I don't think chickens live very long at all, but just
Hmm.
that chicken, I think the guy probably left money to a lot of his animals, but and to some animal charities as well, but I'm gonna leave all my money to my favorite chicken. That's so great. We should make a note somewhere about the turkey pardoning thing because there was a big controversy about that. Did you
Oh
read?
yeah, yeah.
There was like there was some sort of thing I read when I was looking at other facts about who did it first, like who pardoned the first turkey, and whatever I read said that it was not really true. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know.
Okay, we'll
Yeah,
have to
so we'll
look
have
into
to
that.
look
Yeah,
into that. Yeah, because there was like some scandal about, like, this person was the first president to pardon a turkey, but he really wasn't. There was no evidence of it.
yeah.
So it was attributed to somebody else later. So I don't know. Just something I thought of when I was thinking about chickens.
The next one's anagrams. Now I don't know about you, but I don't do a lot of anagrams.
No, I'm not
So
I'm not clever enough to do them, but I love when
yeah.
other people do them and I get to read them. So
Well, you see them on, yeah, when you see them on Jeopardy, I'm always amazed when they do it on
hmm.
Jeopardy, so it's just
Oh,
pretty quickly.
yeah.
So these are some really cool ones, huh?
Yeah, I picked some good ones. The
Yeah.
one you picked originally, though, tell us about that one first.
Yeah, 11 plus 2 can be rearranged to spell 12 plus 1.
That's neat. That's
Yeah,
neat. The
that's
letters
pretty
in each one of those adds up to that's really neat. Yeah, so I did put some more, but that's like there's millions of them online. But I'll
Oh yeah, I'm
do you want to
sure.
read the other ones?
Yeah, gentlemen,
Mm-hmm.
a gentleman can be rearranged to say an elegant man.
I love that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Slot machines, this is kind of cool. Slot machines can be rearranged to say cash lot lost in them.
I love that. That's so great. So great.
The eyes can
Mm-hmm.
be rearranged to they see.
Aha, they do.
Yeah. So I like this one. This dormitory
Yeah.
can be arranged to be dirty room.
Yeah. Yo, why are
Oh,
you
we've done
looking
them
at me
all.
like that? I can, the audience can't see you giving me dirty looks. I had a really nasty room, guys. Like a really bad, messy room. And yeah, it was passed down to my child as well. So I guess I paid the price for that, but
Yep,
whatever. We're messy people by nature.
that's it. All right, you want to do some here?
Yeah, I'll do a couple. Snooze alarms can be rearranged, which is cool too. Alas, no more Z's. I love it. The Morse code can also be spelled as here come dots. um, this one I'd read before. Astronomer could be moon
Mhm.
starer,
They
which is
were. Yeah.
good. And there's a couple of other ones too. This one I read this one to Richard. Hatred
Yeah.
can be rearranged to read red hat, and that's all I'm gonna say about that.
Okay, leave it at that. Yeah.
Yes. The next one. Why don't you do the next one? Because that's your boy.
Clint Eastwood
Yeah.
can be rearranged to Old West action.
Isn't that cool?
That is so cool.
And the next one, I feel so stupid, but as I was reading this, that's why he said that in the song. Jim Morrison, if you
Yep.
rearrange the letters, it's Mr. Mojo Rising. So that's why he
Yep.
friggin' says that in the song.
Yep.
He's just like, you know, tripping and
Yep.
rearranging the letters of his name. But it is cool though. It is cool.
Yeah.
Although I felt kind of dumb when I was like, "Oh, look at that. It actually sounds." Oh, wait. Of course it
Yeah.
does. That's why he said it in the song. Anyway, how about the next one?
Yes. Mother-in-law
Yeah,
can be rearranged to be woman Hitler.
woman Hitler. That's good. That's real good.
Uh,
There are some very nice mothers-in-law out there.
that's
Just
right.
want to give
Yeah.
that caveat. I don't know if anybody's ever met any, but there are nice ones out there.
Yep. That's it. Yep.
And the Statue of Liberty, built to stay free.
There you go.
That's really cool. Yeah. I love those. I could do those all day. You think we could structure that into a whole episode if I found about 100 of those?
I don't know. We might be able to. Yeah.
Maybe, right? Or maybe
Yeah.
we could do it as a segment and do like different kinds of wordplay, like with words. Oh, palindromes.
Palindromes. Yeah.
Palindromes
Yeah.
are fun too. I can't do them, but whenever I read them, that's cool. My best friend in high school, her name was a palindrome, S-
Oh.
spelled the same way, forwards and backwards. All right, so yeah, so that's fun. Fun with anagrams.
Yep. Yep.
Let's see. Okay, do you want me to tackle this history
Yeah.
one?
That's a little bit heavy, but go ahead.
It is. It's a little bit complicated. I won't go too far into it, but the bullet was some conspiracy theorists believe that up to 300 years of history have been completely fabricated. Okay. It's called the phantom time hypothesis, and it's a conspiracy theory. And they believe that the Holy Roman Empire conspired to add 300 years during the early Middle Ages to the calendar. And so I just read briefly on this, so I can't go 100% into detail about what it all means, but I guess it just reminded me of other instances where history was rewritten, in ways. It's definitely not unheard of for rulers to try and erase history when they come into power. So,
Mhm.
like it happened in ancient Egypt almost every time there was a new pharaoh, they would, destroy all the statues and destroy all the records and basically pretend that that one never existed. So it kind of stands to reason that if they think that they're rewriting history, they could add time especially when you're talking about people who wouldn't know the difference. You know what I mean? Like you're not,
Yeah.
it was a long time ago. People can't really check those things back then. So basically what they used to do in the thing I was talking about was they would try to erase the previous ruler, and there would be penalties if if you ever talked about him again, kind of thing.
Yeah, listen, it's actually that whole theory is not unusual, and
Hmm.
we see it all the time,
Oh,
even
sure.
in more recent history. Maybe not to the level that some folks tried to do it,
Hmm.
but there would always be factions that would try to change things or remove reminders of things that existed. And essentially, if it's a recent history within 100 years, you can well imagine within two or 300 years, if that item is not there, they can say it never existed.
Right, right. Yeah, exactly. So there's this guy, Herbert Illig, and in 1991 he theorized that Emperor Otto III decided to change the AD dating system so that he would be placed in the year AD 1000 and solidify his claim to the Holy Roman Empire. So that's why he was doing this time
Right.
shift, because he wanted to be part of the Holy Roman Empire. And Illig thought they achieved this by altering evidence like the ancient rulers had tried before. However, this is more modern times, and this whole hypothesis has been refuted several times, and they use science to do it, which I thought was very cool when I was reading
Yeah.
about it. Um, they went so far as to date tree rings. They went over astronomical charts. They were looking at solar eclipses specifically because solar eclipses and comets are things that are written about throughout history. Even if a long time ago we didn't understand why a solar eclipse was happening, you could definitely observe it. It's pretty obvious when it
Right.
happens. And you can pinpoint it, and you can use uh, astronomy now to figure out how long it's been since the last one, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And so that's what they did. And they used, documents like the writings of Pliny the Elder, who was an ancient, he was a philosopher and physician, I believe. References, like I said, to the eclipses and the comets, other observances as far as where stars were, things like that. Also from the Tang Dynasty in China, so they know when that was. They know when this eclipse was. There's no 300-year period missing, so
Mhm.
that's that's wrong.
Right.
And also, like, this whole 300 years would make Charlemagne fake.
Mm.
So if Charlemagne was fake, that also means that the Visigoths were made up, and the birth of Muhammad and all of Anglo-Saxon England and the Byzantine Empire was also fabricated. So it's like, yeah, that's a lot of work for
Yeah.
one guy, Otto, to take care of all by himself. So pretty debunked, but
Yep.
cool, actually. I mean,
Yep.
conspiracy theories are wacky, but they show creativity, and it also is very interesting to hear about the people who debunk them. It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. I like that
Yeah.
kind of thing. Do we want to talk about phobias?
Yeah. So talk about phobias, fear gravity,
Yes.
barophobia.
Barophobia.
Yeah, people fear that gravity will crush them. And
Hmm.
all others fear that they'll just float away without gravity.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's scary.
I decided to put in some other phobias
Sure.
just to make it interesting. Phobophobia.
Afraid of fear. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
It's funny.
Yeah, that's pretty good,
Okay,
right?
I'm laughing, but it isn't funny. But
No, it's not funny. No, actually, phobias are serious. I mean, they really are, and I have a couple of them. I didn't write it here. I have emetophobia, which is the fear of vomiting.
oh,
It's not
like
good.
yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Don't like it at all. Lechanophobia is the fear of vegetables, which some people have, I imagine. I don't know if it would go so far as a phobia, but they might have an aversion to certain vegetables.
See, now that would have worked when we were kids.
Yeah,
You
sorry,
say,
Dad, I have
I'm afraid of
lechanophobia.
this vegetable." Okay.
They'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'll make you afraid of this vegetable."
I'll give you something to be afraid of.
Yeah, you want to be afraid of something else? You know what this you know what's funny? Just to go on a slight tangent, one of my coworkers, he's a big guy, and he's also got really big hands and big feet. He's like, my hands are the biggest. And it just reminded me of my grandmother on my mother's side. I don't know if she ever said this in front of you, but she used to say it to us kids all the time because she was a tall lady. I think she was like
Yeah,
6 feet, right?
yeah.
She also had really big hands, and she used to just like put on her intimidating face, and she says, "Now you remember, I've got the biggest hands in the world." And she put her big hand out, and she didn't have like a big fat hand. She had big long fingers,
Yeah, yeah.
and she had like a giant hand. And she used to just like for we weren't even acting up that much. She just like, "You just remember, I have the biggest hands in the world." Like, okay. She,
Okay.
yeah. And then without any explanation. She also used to say without any explanation, which was really funny. Make sure you eat what's on your plate because when I was a kid, we always had to finish what was on our plate, all 75 of us. And then she'd just walk out of the room,
Yeah,
not explaining that she grew up in an orphanage. Thank you
right.
very much. Like, hey, wait a sec. And we're just sitting here thinking, 75
Yeah.
kids, like living in like, we're kids. We think it's the same house.
Yeah.
We're picturing
Wow.
75 kids in that dining room. Anyway, uh that's the fear of vegetables. Have you heard of trypophobia? Because it's kind of all over the internet.
No, it's fear of images and patterns and holes and bumps. Really?
Yeah, it became a trend online because
Mhm.
some people revealed that they had this phobia.
Yeah.
And so a lot of kind of assholes would troll people on the internet and have like a lot of pages that you would be scrolling on have an image like that on
Hmm.
purpose. So if you think about patterns of holes or bumps, if you look at like a sunflower after all
Hmm.
the seeds come out
Yeah.
and you just see all the holes there, that
Hmm.
kind of pattern can really
Oh.
trigger, yeah, that kind of, or like there's other plants. You'd have to ask Sue, but it's used in flower arrangements, like dried flower arrangements. There's this thing,
Mhm.
it's like this big seed pod thing,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's like sort of like it's round and then it has like holes in it because they used to be like seeds inside of it.
Yeah.
People are afraid of that. And like
Hmm.
honeycombs and stuff, they get kind of freaked out. It's sad.
Wow.
And I've seen some people who freak out looking at stuff like that. And they were really mad at the internet for a while.
Hmm.
So that's not nice. I would be very sad if this were me. Lutrophobia?
Fear of others.
No, not others. Otters.
Otters.
Yeah.
I read it wrong. I can't. Uh,
Wouldn't that be sad to be afraid of cute little otters?
yeah, it would be.
They're the most wonderful creatures. I would feel so sad if I was afraid of them because
Huh.
we actually want one. They're like cats. Um,
Okay.
Globophobia is the fear of balloons.
Yep.
There are some people that have fears of balloons, but mostly because of the movie It. Iraqi butyrophobia is the fear of peanut butter sticking to the roof of
In
your
your
mouth.
mouth.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's. I wake up from a dream, screaming, worried about my.
You can't though, because your
I
mouth is
couldn't
stuck.
scream. Yeah.
And then they ask you who shot Hamilton. Um, now the next one is
Said that.
okay. Hippopotomonstros quipedaliophobia. And
Yep.
that is the fear of long
Long
words.
words. Yep. Okay.
Okay, the next one is all you.
Okay. A man in Russia once grew a tree in his lung.
Oh,
Okay, wait a minute. Fortunately, doctors were able to remove it before it grew too large. Although some people are skeptical of the claim, his doctors were adamant in the belief that he must have inhaled a seed.
yeah.
Talk about going down the wrong pipe, huh?
Uh-huh. I saw the
Um,
pictures. Did you see the
yeah,
pictures?
yes, I did. You can't always, that's the problem with the podcast, you can't show them.
Right, right.
It's artrosodicom.
Oh,
Did I
Artyom
say wrong?
Sidorkin. Artyom
Sidorka?
Sidorkin. He's Russian.
Sidorka, yeah.
Sidorkin.
The tree was 2 centimeters long, had green needles.
Mm,
So this proves your childhood fear.
yes, that you always told me.
Yeah, that ate the watermelon seeds. Yeah,
Yeah, you said if I swallow watermelon seeds, they grow in my stomach.
stomach. Thank you. You're
Yeah,
welcome.
yeah. They did grow behind that little wall, though. That was pretty awesome. In the house on William Street, we would spit the watermelon seeds behind that little brick wall that you built.
Mhm.
And we literally got watermelons growing there all by themselves because we did that.
Oh,
I know.
these uh, these get more like it though. A live cat was once turned into a telephone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Uh,
It's pretty sad, actually. Trigger warning for animal lovers.
yeah, that's right, exactly.
Yeah.
They attached electrodes to the cat's brain and hooked it up to an amplifier.
Yeah.
The researchers were able to turn the live animal into a functioning telephone. This happened in 1929.
Yes, it did.
Uh, Unfortunately, this is sort of, it's really, if you're actually, whether you like cats or not,
Yeah.
they actually removed part of the cat's skull and some of its brain to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine animal rights activists were not pleased.
No.
Basically, after the electrodes are added, one could speak in a cat's ear and be transmitted to the receiver in another room.
Yeah.
They also tried to recreate the experiment using a dead cat, and that didn't work. So
Which is really strange. So
it's strange. Yeah.
if you have a transmitter in one room and a receiver in another room,
Mhm.
why do you need a living cat's head to do that? I don't understand the meaning
Yeah.
of the experiment. And why didn't it work with the dead cat?
Yeah.
Like telephones work. And as far as I know, I mean, you worked for the telephone company. Were there
Yep.
dead cats inside all the phones?
It could have been, yeah. No, I mean, if you think about the theory of it, if you get a string in a can, you
Yeah.
can transmit sound. So what they were talking about there was actually wireless, right? Yeah.
Yeah, wireless,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
So not exactly telephone, but
Yeah. All right. Let's get off that one. That's kind of sick. So,
no problem. Not exactly more upbeat, but
yeah.
it's not as bad as it sounds. So you had written nuclear fallout used to be measured in sunshine units,
Right.
right? And a stand-up comedy bit by George Carlin helped call attention to it and prompted for a change. Now I don't know where you got the this clip from.
Yeah.
Whoever wrote it is a little bit wrong. So it's not you.
Yeah.
So strontium units were the units that they used to measure radioactivity from strontium 90, right?
Right.
And the maximum safe units of strontium 90 is 100. And they were briefly in the 50s called sunshine units, only because people that you're communicating this to know what sunshine is,
Right.
and they don't necessarily know what strontium is. So it wasn't exactly to soften the language. George Carlin, that's a funny bit. He does a whole bit about how we've softened our language or
Yep.
whatever.
Yeah. That's
Um,
one of the things he brought up. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But that was in the 70s, right? Probably.
Yeah.
George Carlin.
Probably. Yeah.
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 I think they just did it. I think they just did it in the 50s
Yeah.
to make it easier for the average person to understand. And also, there may have been a little bit of PR involved because if you remember, like the sort of nuclear age, the atomic age, they did want it to be really exciting and
Mhm.
happy. And if you look at the decor from that period, they were all like, atoms in the decor everywhere, and it was supposed to be like really trendy and cool and neat. And so I get that. I get that element of it. But yeah, but it wasn't in the 70s. It was in the 50s. So that was the
Right.
biggest correction. But it is true what Carlin said. He's not wrong about softening language. Like I remember Desert Shield
Yep.
being
Yep.
changed from Desert Storm. So
Mhm.
I get it. So yeah, that's not exactly more upbeat, but it's better than cats' brains.
Yeah. But often, we know that comedians say things to make a point,
Oh sure. Oh,
not necessarily to be perfectly accurate.
oh, absolutely.
You know,
Yeah,
it,
he makes quite a few he made quite a
he
few
made quite a
points
few
that were
points. Yeah.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and he was always very interested in trying to not necessarily change people's minds, but to like wake people up to some of our hypocrisies.
Mhm.
So, you know, he was a little bit like that.
Wasabi. If
Wasabi.
if you hate if you ate natural wasabi, you wouldn't find it spicy.
Hmm.
Oddly enough, it only becomes spicy when crushed.
That makes sense. That's
Yeah.
where the flavor comes from. They
Yeah.
actually crush it when they make it into
Yeah.
wasabi.
Yeah. Most of it you wouldn't eat in, say, your average Japanese restaurant because it's actually dyed horseradish.
Yes.
Real wasabi is much more expensive. You can get real wasabi for sure, but most of the time you would be spending a lot more for your meal. So
Yeah, wasabi, like the actual real stuff,
it's
you
just fun to
can
see.
Wasabi, yeah.
Yeah.
You can find the real root in some places like high-end sushi restaurants and things like
Mhm.
that, and you can buy it in stores. Um, but it's a rhizome. It's related to horseradish, and it's very close to horseradish. But it has a different flavor profile a little bit. So,
Yeah.
but most restaurants that you would go to, you see that green stuff. It's horseradish, regular old horseradish with green dye. Yeah. And that's pretty strong once it's crushed. I mean, all of those rhizomes, they get their flavor. It's like ginger is a rhizome too.
Yeah.
Ginger gets its flavor when you crush it also. It's like very strong once you crush it. Same kind of idea. All right, so the next one, true or false? Tea is banned in the British Armed Forces. Now that's such a silly cut. Tea would never be banned from anywhere in the British anything.
True. They would not.
True. No, it is actually the exact opposite. And I knew this before you put that fact there because I remember somebody laughing about it. They inside tanks,
Yeah.
they actually have BV units, which are boiling vessels, and they are used for boiling, for other reasons like cooking like
Good.
food, but mainly, let's be honest, it was so they could have a cup of
About the
tea.
tea.
It
Yeah.
was about the tea. And tea, yes, it's a joke to us Americans how much like British people are obsessed with tea, but
Mhm.
literally like tea in history was one of the most important things in the whole world at the time
Oh
when it
yeah.
was
Well,
at its height.
yeah.
Everybody thought tea was the most important thing, not just British people. And, frankly, we Americans, before we were Americans, thought tea was pretty freaking important too.
Well, listen,
At one point.
coffee got started because of the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, and coffee became a huge thing. I mean, tea was, if you look at even if you just watch Antiques Roadshow, you could see how important tea was because they would like have this little container that was there to hold tea. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this is, casually $25,000 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's got a lock on
The
it
whole tea. That's
because
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it has a lock on it because the
Yeah.
lady of the house would not let anybody else touch her tea because it costs a lot of money. Tea
Yeah.
was like once they discovered tea, I don't remember what year that was, but once they discovered tea, it became a huge commodity all over the
Oh
world.
yeah.
And yes, the British were hugely involved in the colonialism of like a lot of
Hmm.
countries, but
Yep.
and that played a big part. But yeah, they had tea making, basically kettles
Mm.
in their army tanks.
Doesn't surprise me.
Nope, me
Yeah.
neither. So I guess because we found so much information, I think this is going to be a two-parter.
Two-parter.
Going to be
Yeah.
a
No question
two-parter.
about it. No
Yeah,
question
we
about
can.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, we can have two parts.
Yeah.
Ain't kidding, kid.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess in a couple of weeks we can do some more of these. And
Yep.
until then, if you could please go on Apple Podcasts and you subscribe there. You can rate us, give us a good rating, and you can send us an email if you like, mochiverse@gmail.com. That's MOCCIA at gmail.com. Almost forgot what mail server we use. And leave us an email. Say whatever you like. And so before we go,
Bump.
yeah.
Yeah. Where do sick boats go to get better?
Where?
The boat dock.
Oh, the boat duck.
Yeah. Okay. How does a banana answer the phone call? Yellow.
Yellow.
How does a bee brush its hair? It uses a honeycomb. Okay.
Oh, how cute.
What animal is dishonest?
Lion.
Yep. What has four wheels and flies? This is an old one.
What?
A garbage truck.
Oh, gross. Okay.
Yeah. what what's a, what's a lazy kangaroo called?
What?
A pouch potato.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
I like that. No.
Mount Rushmore is the only rock group that doesn't sing or play musical instruments.
What about Stonehenge?
Stonehenge too, yeah.
Stonehenge.
What do tacos say in church?
What?
Let us pray.
Oh, okay.
What's an Easter Bunny's favorite musical genre?
It was
Genre.
genre. Genre?
Genre. I was kidding. I was just
That's
emphasizing
good.
a
I
little
like
bit. Yeah.
genre.
Yeah. Hip hop.
Hip hop.
Yeah. How do astronauts organize a trip?
How?
They plant it.
They plan it. That's good. Those are some good ones.
Those are good ones. Yeah. I was just going to say, thinking of the bunny, I wanted to tell you a bunny
Oh,
story.
oh, yes.
And there was a bunny over in the next door yard, and it was standing in the yard looking at the house. I guess I'm not sure what it was doing,
Yeah.
but probably trying to figure out how to get into the bushes.
Yeah.
And these crows started circling it, and
Really?
they were
Crows?
obviously going after it. And first it was one, and then what made me think that it was actually what was going on was the crow would be right in front of the rabbit, and the rabbit had his back to it, and all of a sudden it would turn around and face the crow, and the crow would back off. And I said,
Oh.
okay, this crow is stalking the rabbit. So then a second one came over and they were circling it. So I went out there and shooed the crows away, you
And they
know.
were crows, not hawks, right?
Yeah, they were crows. Yeah,
Oh, that's so weird.
yeah. And it was a good sized bunny too, a rabbit, whatever you want to call it. But
Yeah.
so anyways, I missed a bunny story. So I just
Well, wait, I always appreciate a good bunny story.
yep,
I'm
I know
glad
you
you
do.
saved I'm glad you saved the bunny, but why didn't you bring it to me?
Yeah. Well, the other thing about it, which is really, and I kind of get why it does it. I was probably 5 feet away from that bunny and it didn't move.
Oh yeah.
And I think the reason they do that is because they say, if I stand still, you're not gonna see me. I think
Yeah,
that's
I'm just a
why they
rock.
do
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
exactly.
But that was kind of cool.
Oh, poor
So
bunny. I'm glad you saved the bunny.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah. I wasn't gonna tolerate it. I said,
that's
this is
right.
bullshit. If I had a BB gun, I would have done something with that. But I just I had a napkin from eating dinner, and I was just flopping against it and tell them, get the out of there, you silly ass.
Bad crows. Naughty
Yeah,
crows.
bad
Got to
crows. You
behave
want to die,
themselves.
crow? Get out of there.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah.
Well,
Anyway,
normally I love crows, but geez. All
yeah.
right. All right, folks. That's it. I guess we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. Daddy wasn't finding a bow wow. I've got a little cat. I'm very fond of that. I'd rather have a big bow wow.
The finger was put in detention for always picking its nose. Oh, on the nose.
I was gonna say what?
It's picking on the
We're
nose.
always
That's right.
picking on the nose.
Yeah. Damn. I can't even read my own writing.